Okay, the next then would be the distribution system. Once we get the water into the pump, then we got to send it out down through the system. We're going to have main lines and laterals, whatever type it might be. And so we have to look at the initial cost of that system. And there are some decisions that have to be made. If we're going to use a system on a golf course, do we want to have all of the heads valve and head, run with wiring to controllers throughout the grid, and those controllers, called satellites, run to a main computer and have it totally computerized from a main site? Or do we want to break it down so that each satellite has to be programmed independently and we don't have the extra, so you can devalue that? Don't go to a centralized system, go to individual satellite controls and run them all from the satellites. Well, that'll save you some initial cost. Don't give you the flexibility of operation that you'd have with the totally computerized program. Might save you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to just leave all of them individual. Or you might not even go to valve and head at all. You might go to a system of keyed sprinklers. Go back 20 years and have every sprinkler head with a valve and key, and you go out and just change heads. You have irrigators out there running around all night, water into place, manually inserting and running the system. Well, initially that'd be way cheaper. But over the long haul, what are the benefits of going to automation versus having all of that labor involved in doing valve and key sprinkler heads? So there's trade-offs, initial cost versus operating cost. On agriculture, gosh, you got all kinds of choices. Do we want to put in a hand line? Do we want to upgrade it to a wheel line? Do we want to put in a linear? Do we want to put in a center pivot? Maybe all of them would work. A lot depends on the crop and what we're going to try to accomplish with the crop. A lot depends on the size of the farm and the shape of the farm as to what we're going to accomplish. If we got a little 5-acre pasture, a center pivot doesn't make any sense at all. But a hand line might make a lot of sense, or a solid set might make a lot of sense. Now, it's going to cost initially more money to put in a solid set, but the operation of it's going to be way less labor intensive, and it might be well worth it to do that. And you will find that many, many of these little small ranchettes get solid set systems because the initial cost isn't a whole lot of money. They can be run with very little labor, so you don't have to worry about every night when you get home from work you got to go out and move the pipe on your little 5-acre pasture. It can be a real pain in the neck. Whereas you can just let it run off of a controller otherwise, have it totally automated. And oftentimes that's a very good choice. Some people aren't willing to spend the money and they'll go out and move their hand line. So there's options. Then do you want to upgrade to a wheel line? Well, one of the things that determines that is what kind of crop you're growing. Can you move a wheel line through the crop? If you can, then it becomes a viable option. Or do we just want to solid set it? And again, one of the valuable choices that we're making there is how valuable is the crop and how valuable is your time. So we're trading dollars for time, or we're trading maybe efficiency for initial cost. By putting in a solid set system, we can be way more efficient in watering. We can sequence it across a field way better. We can really baby the water on. If we want to water every part of the field a little bit on a given day, we could do it. With a solid set, with a hand line, you'd be out there running your legs off to do the same job. And if you have a high value crop, it makes a whole lot of sense to be looking at solid set. It can pay for itself pretty rapidly just on improvement of quality and quantity of crop.
You have to be able to farm around it too, right?
True. That is an issue, is to be able to, what's the farmability of the property? Is it going to be in your way? the kind of farming that you're doing? Are you going to end up chopping off risers all over the place if you solid set it?
Is it very common practice anymore to have those ones that pop up, but out of the ground, the full length risers?
Where have you seen that before, Kari?
I've seen it, we used to have some in our orchards.
You actually have some pop-up heads in your orchards.
We had a couple of them.
Just, well, Kari's mentioning there are some sprinklers that have a high pop capability. There's rotors and sprays both that'll do that. In the turf biz, they're pretty popular in turf because you can. Oh, they were impacts that were pop. How high did they pop up?
High enough to water an orchard.
Oh, and it popped up that high? I don't know if I've ever seen one. Might be something somebody was experimenting with, maybe. You can buy pop-up type sprinklers that do get out of the way. You know, when they shut off, they drop down to ground level, and you're not going to break them off in the orchards. You know, they're worrying about the people with the ladders snapping the risers off with hooking a ladder on them, or somebody tripping over them and so on. Or you go in and mow, they'd be out of your way for mowing. So yeah, I could understand how that might work. They're pretty expensive. You know, you're doubling the cost of that sprinkler by putting it in a high pop mode. I've never seen an impact on a high pop situation. I've seen a lot of rotors that way and sprays, but they're pretty expensive. But it can be done. You know, it is a possible solution. And